We'll start off by maybe just very briefly, Aditya, if you come from a very star-studded fintech background, having seen a lot across, I would say, large-scale institutions, right? Before we move on, maybe just take a minute to tell us all the types of organizations that you've actually seen, the story of technology play out at, very briefly.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm a very boring career. When I started my career, it was credit cards with Citibank, but it was one of the most prestigious and the most innovative cards business of the time. Got a chance to do sales, credit, risk, collections, that is typically part of any lending business. And from there, I got a chance to join Deutsche Bank, which I called as a retail banking startup in India, because 2005-06, they were setting up the shop and wanted to enter the retail banking business. I again spent 4.5 years talking about very, very different aspects of those businesses, and it was a true blue startup, Ashwini, at that time. And from there, I swifted into credit bureau space in 2010, where last 15 years, 14 with TransUnion Sybil, and 1 year at Experian. I've had a chance to be in account management, consulting, product, merger acquisitions, investments, operations, and my favorite, technology, right, for a very long time. So that's been briefly my journey, and my job demands that I work with the financial services sector day in, day out, from smallest of financial institutions to the largest in the country.
Aditya and I have known each other for a couple of years now and have had a lot of conversations on what is going on in the market with all things AI, right? So much of what we're seeing, especially in 24, 25, the hype around AI has really been focused on building AI products and building AI startups, and really focused on the technology and the delta that has, kind of just a huge change over there, right, in terms of what the technology itself does and affords you to do. But what the hype has, like with any other, change in the past, what the technology growth typically ends up hiding is organizations, enterprises, people, systems don't change at the speed at which technology changes, right? And you are not new to transformation, and so I want to actually take a step back from AI and look at, if you look at the transformation to mobile, the transformation to cloud, the transformation to SaaS, we've seen this over and over and over and over again for the last 20, 25 years, right? This is not new by any means. If you had to go back between TransUnion and Experian and all your experiences, just maybe briefly tell us a little bit about what happens every time there's a transformation, because it really does feel like it comes down to product, people, process, right? These are the three things that typically get disrupted. And if you have to walk us through maybe an example of a transformation gone right and a transformation gone wrong, maybe tell us a little bit about that, and what were kind of the patterns that you saw, which we can maybe string into, AI as we move forward.
I have more to talk about transformations that don't go right, actually, because that's an essence of transformation. It starts with an idea, it starts with a problem always, it starts with a chaos in the business. And a lot of times there are sporadic individuals who suffer and face that problem, generally try to bring that transformation, even if they're not the experts at it. But they're the ones who are affected by it in an organization. And mostly it starts breeding from there. Like you said, Ashwini, the hardest part of transformation is on two counts. One, we think it starts with technology, but actually it starts with people and culture in the organization. And I have numerous examples to talk about where transformations have failed because either you've not been able to align the organizational strategy around it, you've not been able, and that's why you don't have funding around it, budgeting around it, or you don't have even a cultural alignment to talk about it. I would go and talk about, I want to change the world within my company, but the next town hall, my CEO is talking completely opposite, for example. And that's something we've experienced in many, many organizations, always. So the first thing is people. If you do not have people on board, people who are affected, people who are contributing to that transformation, people who have to develop, implement, use, if they don't come together, it doesn't work, right? An example of a failed transformation would be, I'll not name company and products, but there was this eminent need in 2012, 2013 when the industry was climbing back from the consumer finance crisis of those times. And one large bank in India had suddenly kicked off a digital transformation within the bank. Now, large institutions generally are role models for many other institutions in the industry to follow. Somebody in the industry, like some other mid-tier banks, saw that transformation happening. They thought this is just about copy-pasting and driving it. They never knew what goes behind it. And the whole digital journeys that we see successfully operating today, actually folks who've been part of it in 2011, 12, and 13 would remember the kind of failures that came in where fraud started rising because the right controls, the right imagination about product journeys didn't happen. There was loss of opportunities that started happening when business was coming through the door, but banks were not able to fulfill it. And I think that's where one of the failures, as an example, comes out. There are other examples. Deutsche Bank, when I was part of it, there was Barclays Bank that came in around the same time. They exited retail in India. What went wrong? They tried to imbibe something that was already being practiced in the country and copy it, but when you copy it, it doesn't get copied and exactly produces the same result. There's so much drift that comes in, there is so much hallucination that comes in.
Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, and apart from being vocal, I shamelessly admit that I've been very, very brutally honest in expressing what I see interacting with many startups, if not all. One, like you said, yes, there are a lot of startups who build a tech product or a tech competency or an idea that transforms into some tech capability. And most of the times they are trying to fit it onto certain domain of businesses, banking, fintechs, solving use cases like fraud, digital acquisition, underwriting, marketing, without really having a reasonable domain expertise of what they are going and solving for. As a tech company, if I'm going and solving something for a bank, I need to have reasonable understanding for the bank. And most of the conversations today from a lot of technology startups that is coming forward is, I built this, I tried this in e-commerce, I know how this works, like whether it's your chat bots and voice AIs and assistive agents and GPT-based solutions. Just because it worked for a soap selling company, that doesn't mean it will work for a bank or a credit bureau. I have come across so many startups who believe that they have a great solution. Probably I think they might have a great solution, but they can't talk 5 minutes about a credit bureau. They can't talk 5 minutes about what a credit bureau is or what a credit bureau does. Now what that does is, it affects my trustability on that startup, those founders, their technology teams, of will they be sustainable in terms of the solution that they're trying to provide, or end of the day, the ball is going to drop on my court to figure out how to use this and make sense in my business out of it. And when it comes to that, then why not my technology team? Why not? Right, that is first. Second, truth be said, the mortality rate of startups is very high. 100 startups come in 2 years you see 90 of them don't even exist. Consolidated, merged, closed, shut down. How do I, as a enterprise, which is a global enterprise, largest credit information company globally, a lot of reputation attached, and a lot of responsibility that I have to serve in the ecosystem every day, because India's lending runs on credit bureaus. How do I put my competency dependability on a company which I don't know I will see next year or not? And then what will happen? If somebody thinks that a paper contract is going to safeguard me, I'm sorry, I'm a very I have very low belief on paper and ink. Somebody is winding up, what will you do? You can't, right? And the last piece is the financial muscle as well, right? So when we work with companies, we need to be assured that they have a sustainable business path ahead. If not 20 years, 4 years, 5 years, 8 years, every 2 years they have to seek rounds of funding because they're cash strapped. The P&L is not holding up. We don't work with companies based on valuation. I will look at P&L. But that's exactly where the sustainability of that organization's business capability with me is going to come in. Whereas there is this whole valuation thing that kind of, I'm a X million dollar valuation, but I'm borrowing to meet my salary expenses. My corporate procurement will not allow me to go ahead with that. I think these are few of those instances that we deal with every day. Sometimes we come across beautiful solutions being created, but the trust and sustainability of those engagements is something that pulls us back in terms of engaging with those companies.
And I think, just going back to the use cases, if we went to the first point that you brought up, which is domain knowledge, right? I think there are ways in which a lot of startups out there are slowly starting to attack that problem, right? One, setting up kind of COEs, centers of excellence inside of an organization where you're not just, it's not like SaaS. Like I give you a tool, take a login, 5 logins, see you later, right? It's not that anymore. It's actually, if I'm bringing in a piece of AI solution to solve a workflow, some part of your loan journey or underwriting journey, whatever that is, right? Then you don't just throw a piece of software over the wall and be done, right? I think in the space of AI especially, there are lots of companies out there that are encouraging companies to set up centers of excellence internally, where you're also, I think this whole services as software and software as services, this has been going on for a while now, in the industry. And I think the reality is the more AI products there are, the more people you have to leave, especially in the Indian market, right? Yeah. Which is so used to buying services, right? More services than software ever. To leave behind people to do the integration, to do the delivery, to be a part of the fabric and the DNA of the company, right? So the structure of the startup itself starts to look very different than a typical SaaS startup, which I think the Indian market is very used to, right? So I think there's some things around how delivery happens, how production scale AI happens, right? Which is very rare, right? Few and far in between today, right? But to see those success metrics, it feels less like somebody buying software and it feels more like two partners trying to deliver two outcomes, right? Because there's equal, and we just chatted about this, right? There's equal kind of suspicion from this debate that's been going on for I think roughly 8 to 12 weeks about, Indian startup founders leaving India or participate. So there's basically that piece coming together, right? To see how do we build that trust with the CXOs and the ecosystem present in India in a form of a partnership to be able to see those outcomes as opposed to, here's a piece of software, I don't care about the domain, or correct, I took it, see you later, right? Correct. I think there's a little bit of that. Can you tell us, let's maybe just move a little bit to your own AI roadmap. I know that, you have spent a significant amount of time on things like your data systems, the kind of automation. Can you tell us a little bit about next 12 to 24 months? What are the types of use cases that seem like ones that you guys are going to be tackling, but also that you're seeing in the fintech ecosystem as a whole?
Yeah, I think these are very commonly discussed cases. I don't think I'll add too much in terms of an incremental knowledge, but I'll still speak about it. One, as more and more digital becomes relevant in conducting business interactions with consumers, no matter whether a fintech or a large bank, today everybody is digital, right? State Bank of India is one of the digital adopters in the country today. Forget every other private bank and HDFCs of the world and ICICI Bank or IDFCs, etc. I think the first problem is going to be on fraud. And we at Experian have a big bet and believe in the area of fraud containment that we will do. As part of the AI journey, we do not just have data to contain fraud and create solutions out of it. Now the world is progressing into device intelligence, right? And device intelligence is also becoming a passe now. Right? It's becoming traditional. But I think the challenge in the area of fraud, especially, that AI is extremely, extremely powerful and very hopeful for us to find solutions, is to find the connects, right, in the disparate, very, very disparate data that fraudsters generate, and even good consumers are generating all over the place.
What kind of fraud are you seeing? Like what are the
anything,
3, 4 types
identity
of-
frauds, account takeover frauds, transaction frauds, account frauds, everything. And it's only rising. The growth rate of fraud is far higher than the growth rate of the banking lending industry. Right? If I could run a balance sheet on fraud and make money on it, probably I'll be most profitable than most of the banks. In fact, now it has started gradually creeping into. So earlier what used to happen, either there were frauds in the physical interaction world where people will fabricate an income tax return, a fabricated photocopy of a ID document and so on. Then came digital, where people started kind of committing all kinds of frauds, and I think the room will be full of knowledge about the digital frauds that are happening, from the Jamthara kind frauds to the mule risk frauds that kind of are at Gallo right now. There is also a phygital fraud mechanism that has come into play now, where something is said on digital platforms, in fulfillment something else is done. It's becoming extremely difficult to keep pace with that. And I think at Experian, one of the favorite areas for us to work on and solve has been fraud containment in the country always. AI at this juncture, we've had AI-backed solutions. Some are ML, some are true blue Gen AI solutions, connecting the dots in the disparate data and trying to solve for it. The other area, I think, where AI is getting more and more embedded, which is very common use cases, is operational efficiencies. I think we still need to manage the scale of business that we have at the most cost-efficient manner. It's not just a good thing to have. In a competitive market, this becomes my competitive advantage. If I can produce services at 1/4 the price of my competitors, I will not just be able to give sustainable pricing to my products in the market, making it a competitive advantage, but also the tools that go behind it keep sharpening my products and services over a period of time, whether it is customer experience on operations side, whether it is data operations that is at the heart of credit bureaus always, or it's the analytics which helps me to create solutions over that data. So Gen AI, just to share with you, at Experian, we have one of the largest Gen AI practice that I'm aware of across any global credit bureaus in any market. Right, we have a seeded practice incubated within Experian at our Global Capability Center that is continuously, and the good part, 60% of that very large team are people who have been in credit bureau space with Experian working on technology and product engineering, even when AI was not known. And that's where I'll connect experiential knowledge, Ashwini, that you just spoke about a while back.
Yeah.
Talking to those guys versus talking to a startup, my conversation as a business executive is very different. I go there only with a problem statement. I don't define solutions. They define solutions for me. And one thing I love about Vibe format is that we are trying to do exactly the same thing here, where I've only defined a problem statement for the platforms, and they are working on it, and tomorrow let's see what unfolds out of it.
Yeah.
But that's the gap that I think we'll come in. So efficiency is a big play. One place that we want to get to as a business, and we are trailing behind, we need to test, learn, and then get there as part of our journey, is AI-driven innovation, where I'm not dependent on people telling AI what to do, but AI starts reading patterns and suggesting, right? Just like we use co-pilots for general conversations and anything else. Would I get to a stage where the AI starts breeding ideas for us and making
proactively
suggesting?
kind of showing up. Yeah.
But that's a little while to go.
Yeah. No, that's a great range, I think, of use cases. We covered everything from fraud to automation, operational efficiency, to customer experience, to data cleaning up. And I think you've touched upon pretty much everything you are seeing coming up, but also already underway. Now, Aditya, I would say you are actually one of the very rare people in the industry that are who's sitting at the intersection of policy, compliance, right? So when I say policy, all things policy, compliance, all things technology, and all things business, right? Very, very rarely do we get to meet and talk with people that are sitting in that intersection. Tell us a little bit, especially in the context of India, right, where fintech compliance feels like the big, I mean, it's definitely, it feels like a very key pillar holding up the industry across, both from a, I don't know, like monitoring, ensuring things happen a certain way, but also controlling where and how technology gets applied, right? So I think this is a very important area that startups, I think there's a huge kind of it feels like a green field, right? There's a lot of opportunity here in the space of compliance. And I know that it's a very favorite part of the work that you do as well. So tell us a little bit about how should startups even think about playing in the space of compliance and governance, given, the space of policy, how do they participate in it? What are the opportunities there and what are you seeing, right, given where you are?
So, yeah, favorite or not, but it's a necessary element of my job to be an advocate in the areas of policy, work with the Reserve Bank of India. Credit bureaus are regulated by RBI, and all my clients are, right? I largely work in the space which is regulated by RBI, and my clients are direct or indirect regulated of RBI or a similar regulator like SEBI or IRDA. So we do a lot of work, and 15 years I've got a chance to see the evolving policy and regulatory landscape as well. Two or three things. I think one, there are cycles that we have seen in the regulatory framework or the regulatory environment where generally you see a good 5-year enterprising approach and then comes a 2-3 years of control and governance approach. I go back 20 years, and when I look at from governors and changes at RBI and the approaches that RBI and the evolution of RBI regulations, I come to believe that there is a 5 years of bull run and then there is a 3 years, 2 years of consolidation and control and governance, because end of the day we are dealing with money, we are directly impacting the economy of the country, and that's why the regulators have to be very, very responsible around that. 2-3 things that have happened over the last 3-4 years, immediately in the post-COVID times. One, regulators have taken cognizance of a lot of innovative business models in the fintech sector and have had very stern opinion about that. And I call it a cleanup time. As simple as, I am not licensed to do credit lending business. I can't build a balance sheet on credit lending. So I go via, right? The SLDGs and FLDGs model of the worlds. The first loan default guarantee partnerships, second loan default guarantee partnerships, where a non-licensed entity is taking a risk on its book or P&L through the front end of a regulated entity. And suddenly we saw over time that millions of dollars of loan book was sitting in unregulated areas. It is only natural, it was only obvious that time will come to clean it up. And I think that's why you would have seen the last few years where a lot of restrictions on these business models have started coming in. Right, the second piece is, while we are there to conduct business, there is no early wins, there is no early success. You'll have to be patient, you'll have to build it, but unfortunately a lot of fintech, big section of fintech industry has also been, if I say, not very consumer friendly. The end purpose was to make sure that the consumer is served, right? It did do a lot of things, it brought innovation to the industry, it went to the financial inclusion segments which otherwise the traditional banks, and it also challenged the banks to start becoming innovative. Right? In the last 7-8 years that fintechs have been more prominent in the country, we've seen them pushing the banks to become more innovative, otherwise the banks lose market shares and consumers and so on. but we have to be responsible around sustainability and governance of those business initiatives.
And how can, I think specifically for this audience, given they are typically B2B builders, how do they participate in that? Like, where do you see the opportunities for technology to intervene in automating compliance or governance or those areas? Like, where do you see the opportunity there?
But it's happening, Ashwini. Right in the heart of this city, RBI Innovation Hub. The India RBI Innovation Hub is set up here. I don't know how many people have really reached out, engaged, and they're very, very innovative. They are very open. In fact, most of the folks at RBI Hub leadership, except few, are not even employees. They are startup founders who are participating in building the ecosystem out and see how solutions can be created. The government has opened up multiple forums on responsible and AI and governance of AI solutions, and this is something that is broomed only in the last 2-3 months. I think there is enough participation that is happening. I am aware about a lot of startup founders. There are a lot of venture capitalists who are actually sitting with Ministry of IT, Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Commerce, to bring them together onto a common understanding of how a responsible AI development in the country is going to take place. But last but not the least, innovation is to be built on the basics. Those basics should not be compromised. Innovation is to strengthen and further the cause of those basic ideas. Banking, for example, there is very, very strong basics of the banking, deposits, lending responsibly, and you just can't lend anything to people. And I think that needs to remain as on the railroads of safeguards on the railroad of AI and transformation.
But do you see, I mean, I think there's a lot of work happening, but do you see in terms of just AI specifically based outcomes in compliance really growing in the coming years? And if so, any specific examples or use cases that you're already seeing or have a hint of?
Absolutely. I think it is bound to grow. There is no doubt in my mind about it, Ashwini. The reason stems from two fronts. The regulators themselves are pushing regulated entities to adopt technology to fulfill their compliance and regulatory obligations. Right? Last year, or last year, RBI issued a master direction demanding all regulated entities to have compliance management platform for all RBI governances. Oh. And it's not just on this side of the regulated entity. RBI over the last 3-5 years have evolved and innovated in terms of using technology to rule, to implement, govern, and control the compliance responsibilities in the industry. The Daksh portal is an outcome of that. Data and innovation is necessarily an inherent part of whatever the regulator is doing today, whether it is insurance, whether it is SEBI, whether it is RBI. It has become a core of, and wherever there is data and platform, I believe AI will always make an impact on it.
Yeah, I think, even the organizations that we work with, right, especially on the lending side and credit side, as you're talking about, I think there's been a lot of push even in terms of like cleaning up the data, making sure, an automated form of checking if the people in a very specific list are not necessarily served, right? Or CKYC lists are, compiled and filed digitally in a certain way. So there's a lot of that that's definitely that we've been seeing in the market, even especially over the last like 9 to 12 months. So it feels like every day there's a new use case and new application that's being asked, which I seriously think is a huge opportunity, just in terms of areas where you can build, right, and where you can go.
Yeah, Ashwini, I'll just talk about Credit Bureau for a minute. And until September of last year, credit bureaus, because there is a lot of symmetry in what the industry submits to credit bureaus. There are 4 credit bureaus, hardly any disparity. We were dealing with 650 million records of data from an incoming data perspective. Right? This is not the delivery side of it. This is the entire data that comes in, and you have to assess, process, ingest, maintain, and ensure that it's maintained with the right quality and stuff like that, right?
Did you say 650 million?
650 million a month,
Wow.
right? This is only credit lending data that the industry reports to credit bureaus. If that surprises you, then let me go to my next sentence. A small regulation change from RBI issued in September, coming into effect from 1st January, it's already gone, already implemented, changed the life at credit bureaus. In 3 months, we moved from 650 million data handling processes to 2.3 billion data handling processes. Today, my organization handles 2.3 billion data every month, not because the loan portfolios have grown, because RBI changed frequencies and parameters of how quickly the data from a bank needs to go to credit bureaus. Today, most banks are actually already sending it. The regulation is fortnightly, but they're sending weekly, and some are even sending daily. Imagine if a State Bank of India kind of organization starts throwing daily, weekly data to you, what would that volume look like? Now, the challenge for companies like us will be, one, what kind of tech stack I should have, AI or no AI, to handle that kind of volume at that kind of velocity. And all this is coming with very strict regulatory guidelines of turnaround times that bureaus or banks need to maintain. I need to maintain 5-day stat on data ingestion from the time a bank sends me the data. All this happens over the next 7 months of a cycle and 7 days of a cycle end. That means the entire data will be dumped on you within the 7 days of a cycle end. And I will get 3 days, 4 days, 5 days to ingest it. This is the operational part of it. The place where I think technologies like Gen AIs and intelligence comes in is quality. I have a bank sitting, a cooperative bank in Kanyakumari, 2 Jammu and Kashmir banks sitting in Srinagar, and everything in between on the east and the west side of it. Everything in between. Imagine the kind of disparity that comes in despite a regulated format, guidelines, this, that, etc. But imagine the disparity that, and this is where I think technology solutions have to come in ensuring the quality of data.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I feel like there was a ton in there. I hope somebody was taking notes. There was just a whole lot of, I think, both opportunities as well as just how does the system function, right? Because a big part of transformation really feels like you're pointing out a story of how to actually make the transformation happen, and a lot less about just what your technology can do at that point. Thank you so much for joining us, Aditya. Those of you that want to continue the conversation with Aditya, he'll be around, definitely reach out and talk to him. But thank you so much.
Thank you for having me here, Ashwini. Thank you, Vibe team, for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to interact with you. Thank you very much. I'll be around, so happy to meet each one of you and talk to you about anything that you want to talk about.